It's our first show with a new format, and we're talking about Microsoft. Well, to paraphrase Panos Panay, we want to do something we've not done before. This is the Android Please podcast. It's Friday, October 4th, and welcome. I'm David Ruddick. Joining us for today's plunge into dual screen madness is a co-host of Twit's All About Android and Relay FM's Material podcast, and an occasional AP feature writer, Flo Ion. Thank you for joining us, Flo.
Thank you guys for having me. I'm excited to be here and to hear about all this new format.
Okay, and I think that's all the professional radio voice I have in me. At this point, this is all going to fall
Fine.
apart.
We can divulge it here.
Yeah. So as everybody knows, Microsoft held its big hardware fall launch on Wednesday, and I'm going to use a lot of uhs too. I'm really bad at this, and I'm going to constantly interrupt myself. But we've seen Microsoft really grow into a real OEM in terms of just making so many products now. And on Wednesday, I think that's the most important Surface event we've seen since probably the first Surface event. This was the big one, and there's so much to talk about. But in the context of an Android podcast, obviously, there is one product that really stands out, and ironically, the one that we know least about, unfortunately, and that's the Surface Duo. So the Surface Duo, for those of you who have been living under a rock, because really this has just been the topic of the week and will probably be the topic of the next 2 weeks until Google's event, is a dual screen folding Android device. So it's two screens, not one. There's a hinge in the middle. And so it's not like a Galaxy Fold. The screens are on the inside. You have to unfold it. There are no exterior screens, at least on this concept that we've seen. And you get two 5.6 inch, but not tall aspect ratio. They're fat. They're fat screens. I don't mean to fat shame the screens, but they're wide.
They're PHAT, pretty high and tempting.
Yes, they are. They are PHAT. There are some thick screens. And so you get a whole lot of working area on this device. And Microsoft is saying, don't call it a phone. Even though it uses a phone chipset, even though it has LTE connectivity, even though you probably can use it to make phone calls too, and even though it runs Android and apps, and it basically is a phone, it's not a phone. So
I blueprinted in that Microsoft Courier sketch that was going around years ago. I feel like this is just a manifestation of that.
So I think the other one, the Neo, is a little more Curry to me. This to me though has the pocketability that I think people wanted out of the Courier. Kind of like basically the date book. It's supposed to be like a digital date book.
I miss those kind of.
I did. My dad used one growing up all the time. I was like, oh, it looks so cool. It's like leather bound, and there's so many pages in it. It looks so important, but I think that is the idea here. Microsoft is definitely positioning this for business customers. Yeah. We had an editorial from one of our editors, Ryan Hager, who you all know and maybe love, yesterday, talking about the fact that it really is for this weird, tiny little subset of business users who want to be able to do real work from their pocket.
So small.
And that to me is... I'm still trying to wrap my head around that. I've watched the demo videos. I've read a few takes that people have on why this is an important product. And still at the end of it, I'm like, well, I don't know what Android stuff I really want two screens in front of me to deal with.
Fair, but if the iPad mini can do it, I feel like Microsoft can do this for Android, because Google sure as heck ain't doing it with tablets.
No, Google's been, and that was kind of where I went with it was, well, we're relying on Microsoft and Google, two companies that historically have completely failed to get developers to coalesce around tablet applications. I mean, Microsoft, despite the Surface Pro just being a roaring success in the last few years, there really aren't any tablet apps for it. Nobody's really developing those experiences. You have some stylus stuff, of course, for the people who are really doing some hardcore stuff in Adobe Illustrator, but those people already existed, and those tools already existed for Windows. You had Wacom, devices and everything. So that ecosystem was already there. But anything that feels like there's nothing on the Surface Pro that feels like using an iPad, and it never has. So
it feels like a little Microsoft laptop, little Windows laptop.
Exactly, and that's what people use it for. I mean, so if you fly a lot, you will see two devices in business class all the time. You see Surface Pros and you see iPad Pros, and that's basically it. There are some, MacBook Pros occasionally, but really not as many as you would think.
There's Flo in the back with her Pixelbook, and she's just look, just taking it out on the table. Just
I use my Pixelbook on flights all the time. It's a great flying computer, apart from being a little too tall. But I think the my next laptop will solve that. But let's get back to the Duo, because I think it really is. It's one it's perplexing to me, for one, and for another thing, I want to try to imagine like the ways in which people can do this, and also what Microsoft's motivation is for creating it.
Mm.
And I think one of the big ones has been Microsoft, when they announced the original Surface, we're basically saying we can take a real computer and fit it into a tablet form factor, and it's a real computer. The original Surface they didn't have a fanless original Surface. They all had full on, like,
Mm.
U series Intel processors, and everybody was like, this is never going to work. You can't fit that in there. It's going to get too hot. The battery's not going to last long enough. It's just going to be bad. It's going to be a bad experience. You want to have a good keyboard, and yet the Surface has thrived. So I think Microsoft has really pushed toward this idea of hardware digital convergence. So you have products like the Surface that sought to converge a PC and a tablet, and with the Duo, I think their philosophy is, let's converge tablet, PC, and phone. And my worry is that it's going to do all of the things that all of those products do, but worse than any of those individual products. And so I'm just trying to wrap my head around, like, for example, Flo, you and I both have, like, worked in like digital workspaces, for probably like years now, generally speaking. And so for us, like, creating content on the go is part of our jobs. It's something we do. But with this, the idea is that I guess I could like start whipping up a post in WordPress while I'm like standing in line waiting to board a plane, or doing something else really boring, like I'm at the DMV, and I can use the second screen as my keyboard and composition area, or my composition area, my keyboard and like my shortcuts, and then the top screen is like my composition window. I just I have a hard time understanding what situations I'm going to be in where this device's portability is really a much better asset to have than, say, a tablet.
Or say, yeah, exactly. Or say a smaller Windows laptop, because I just keep thinking about the limitations of Android. And like today, for instance, I'm working on a podcast pilot right now for another podcast, and I can't take my Chromebook with me because it will not do the things that I want it to do. So I'm taking this old Windows laptop, an old Dell XPS 15 that I have to do the recording for me, because I trust Windows implicitly more than anything that Android is going to put forward. And so this one, it's cute, the Surface Duo. It definitely is like aesthetically pleasing from a very like forward facing, ooh, this is cool. It's gonna like fit really nicely in my purse. Like this will be a really nice little companion device to like my already tiny Pixel 3. But what am I really gonna get out of it? Like, do I want to do WordPress blogging through the Chrome browser on that when I could do it more full featured on a smaller Windows laptop and have the ability to move around Windows more freely, to open up Photoshop if I need to, and not be limited to this like mobile version. I'm confused as well why Microsoft would say, "Hey, let's put out an Android product." Never mind the fact that there's still a lot of work to be done there for productivity. Uh, where's Microsoft going to bridge the gap for me?
Exactly. And I think that is Android seems like the wrong platform for this to
I agree.
me. I don't Because, for example, editing photos on Android, there are tools, but the mobile version of Photoshop that's on Android phones sucks. And we don't have that cool iPad version like that is on iOS. Maybe Microsoft's going to make that happen. Maybe they'll get Adobe to do it. But at the same time, Adobe has basically treated Android like a second class citizen forever. And because there's never been the tablet ecosystem, the productivity ecosystem, the professional ecosystem around Android as a platform to take supporting it seriously, it's all consumer use case. And now Microsoft is building an Android device that very explicitly is about the professional use case. And I've never seen a successful Android device that really was built for pro users. It's not the kind of
Not even the
plat
Samsung tablets.
No,
Yeah.
they're just not good. If you've ever used, for example, the desktop mode on Samsung's tablets, that basically the Dex mode, it's not good. It looks like it would be good, and then you use it, and you're like, oh, this is terrible.
I'd rather use a netbook from back in the day, which at least allowed me to still, like, move around windows. I mean, why can't I just have that? The
Yeah, exactly.
I was okay with the netbook back in the day. It was really
Or like
useful.
browse the full web. I mean, it's just like one of
Oh,
those things where it's.
what a
I mean,
concept.
when I heard the
Oh,
iPad, I'd forgotten, but the iPad now has the full web
man.
on the iPad Pro and iPad OS, which I think is a huge asset and something that nobody ever talks about on Android. Is there are no desktop class browsers. Like, is Microsoft going to build a desktop rendering version of Edge for Android? I would assume they're going to have to, because I don't think Google is going to build a desktop version of Chrome for Android. Why would they? The devices don't exist. So I think there are so many questions still left around this product. And I think the biggest one is our next discussion is, why did they announce it so far ahead of time? What was really the purpose?
Mm,
A lot of people said, well, it's developers, which, okay, but Microsoft's not launching developer tools for this tomorrow.
nope.
They don't even have a product to launch developer tools for. They have a concept. They have an idea. Granted, one that like turns on and does stuff, runs Android, but getting an Android device up and running is relatively trivial
Exactly.
compared to actually like building out the product and like these are all the features going to have. Like the chipset that this not a phone is going to use doesn't exist yet because Qualcomm hasn't announced it or like done sampling of it. They're saying, well, yeah, it's got an 855 in it right now, but that's just for funsies. Don't worry, it'll have something new when we actually launch it, if we actually launch it, which is not something Microsoft said. They never said if, they did say next winter, next holiday season. Do we think they're gonna meet this? Like, does it seem like they're actually going to launch this product?
There's so much that could change in a year from now. I mean, the Chrome OS ecosystem could grow so much more than now, and it would be a totally different platform by the end of next year if Google really wanted to do that. I am always I always have a lot of trepidation when a company says, "Oh, we'll come out with this next year." Like, so much can change in a year. Like, why not just do this? Why not just pull Samsung card and just launch it before it's ready? Just do it. You know what? Just throw caution to the wind. Just say, "Here we go. Figure it out. Help us figure it out." Maybe I don't know. I mean,
Throwing caution to the wind has worked very well for Samsung this year. I think we can say all the
they still
caution.
have a lot of fans, so I'm not worried about them from that perspective.
Yeah. And I think we've seen a lot of people. I mean, I've seen there's definitely a Microsoft fan response to the Duo so far. It's
Yeah,
extremely positive. I do think it does seem misplaced in the sense that a lot of people are like, yes, a phone, a phone, a phone. And it's like, well, no, not really. It's not. I would not replace my phone with this. I would
absolutely.
never in a million years. Like it would have to be supplementary. That means I would have to carry it with something else. And that already makes it a very weird product in a world where people are already carrying tablets and laptops and phones. And then you're going to add this quasi phone tablet top into the mix there. And that's strange. I think that the device, even though I personally probably wouldn't ever try to go this portable, I think the Surface Neo was the more interesting concept. I think the Duo is getting all of the
More
attention.
realistic.
Yeah, the Duo is getting all the attention because Android, because phone, because Microsoft and phones, and kind of that non-relationship they've had with smartphones, since the Nokia thing went belly up. But I think the Neo is the product that actually probably should get Apple a little bit worried about iPad Pro in relation to Windows. I think the Neo looks very interesting. So the idea with the Neo, I think, is really to have something the size of an iPad, but with twice the screen. And you slap on a keyboard, and suddenly you've got like basically a touch bar on steroids. And I think for people like, I think I instantly saw interest from people who are in the creation business. Like they're like, yes, 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 customizable set of tools I can have in front of me at all times on a little touch screen and supplemented by my keyboard. The touch bar is an interesting idea, but the touch bar is very limited in terms of what it can do. I think with Microsoft, you'll probably see that developers will have a lot of freedom to make use of that area just by basically snapping Windows, because that's how Windows works. And you'll have so many things that could possibly be done with that. I think that's interesting. I think the use case is very obvious for the Neo. You have these people who are on the go who want one machine that can do it all, and that looks really fascinating. It's also not coming out till next year, and it could change. But I think as a product, the Neo to me feels very Microsoft and new Microsoft, whereas the Duo feels, well, we whipped it up in the lab, and what do you guys think? So
Yeah, at least the Neo runs Windows. So that already has
yes,
that going for it. I'm like, okay, I can actually do stuff with it. I can actually launch apps that I need.
yeah, exactly. All right. Okay, so we're gonna cut to an ad here really quickly, and that ad is for us. We're advertising ourselves. The Android Police podcast can't be here without your support, and the easiest way you can show it is by subscribing to us on Twitch. We're now going to be live 3 times a week on Twitch, 4 times actually if you count the Q&A show. So we're gonna be live like all the time, basically every day except Thursdays. Which I don't know why Thursdays are our off day, but they are. So go to twitch.tv/Android Police, and you can, if you're an Amazon Prime subscriber, subscribe to us on Twitch for free. You just have to link your Amazon Twitch accounts. It's super easy, and you can tune into the show. And we're going to be, like I said, live like 4 times a week now. So, there's probably a time and a day during the week when you can catch us live and ask us questions and hang out with people on the team. So go once again to twitch.tv/Android Police to find out more. And thanks for listening. All right. Getting back to Microsoft's announcements yesterday, I think the next biggest one, and the one that does, I would say, still have kind of relationship to Android in that it's running a mobile chipset, is the new Surface Pro X, which is, I think, the one. Obviously, they're going to sell it immediately, which is the big deal. It's going, up for pre-orders already. Starts at, I think, $800, which is
Not bad.
reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, Flo, have you ever used any of these Qualcomm powered laptops?
No, I get scared by anything that's like Qualcomm powered that's not a handheld device. Look, I I'm very much an Intel, like that's what I trust. And I'm not talking about the mobile Intel chips. I'm talking about the full blown, Core i5s, i7 kind of thing. That's where I feel comfortable in terms of workflow and productivity.
Unsurprisingly, by the way, I was wrong about the price. It starts at $1,000.
Oh,
Numbers are
well.
hard, but I still think for what this is, it's a very serious product, I think, from Microsoft in terms of basically, I say going for the gut at Apple in terms of maximum portability on a product that's got a proven form factor. Microsoft already knows people buy Surface Pros. And I think probably the biggest thing people want from a Surface Pro is better battery life. The Intel chip ones, they last a reasonably long time, but they're not
Yeah.
multi-day machines.
Yeah, that's fair for people who are, and more people are on the go now. And so you want to like cater to that particular crowd who's like productive, on trains and planes and that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think with the one thing, I've used some of the Qualcomm laptops. I don't think things are particularly well optimized for performance at this point. Hopefully, Microsoft and Qualcomm can get together and improve that experience. I used a Lenovo device that ran a Qualcomm 855, right? Or it's 850. The 850 is the laptop only chip. And that, yes, the Yoga C630. And that was not a good experience. Even the ARM compiled Edge browser was just so slow. It really bogged down a lot. So I'm hoping with the Surface Pro X, Microsoft and Qualcomm, they're using the new 8CX processor in this. It's based on it. They call it the SQ1, and Microsoft apparently has done a custom GPU for it instead of using Qualcomm solution or customized Qualcomm. So it's not really clear. But they're alleging, basically they're trying to say like, no, this is going to be the better one. This is going to be the one where it finally works. And the one thing about these Qualcomm laptops is because of the nature of a mobile chipset, everything's on die, super low power. The battery lasts forever. So Qualcomm had been quoting 30 plus hours on some of these laptops, which I believe because the batteries in them are massive. And, the screen sure is much bigger than a phone or a tablet or than a phone, but I think that the efficiency of the chipset can't be overstated. Like Qualcomm is just miles ahead of Intel on that area. Intel's never had to worry about it.
That's true. That's true. By the way, this thing really looks like with the like a pixel slate, like a beefed up pixel slate.
It does. It does. And also, I think the other thing the Qualcomm chips allowed them to do is make it really, 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 really thin, iPad thin now. So that's I still personally I wonder who's looking at a Surface Pro and saying, "Nah, it's too chunky. I need more thinness." Like I'm not sure what the benefit actually is to that. I don't really know.
Bragging rights,
I guess.
marketing bragging rights.
I guess it's lighter. Lighter is
Yeah.
good, I suppose. People just want something that feels a little more, easy to use. I still think Windows is going to struggle with the fact that as a tablet operating system, Windows is whatever.
Yeah.
It's just there isn't an ecosystem there. Granted, this will be easier to kind of like if you just want to watch a movie or something, I guess this will be a little nicer to use than a regular Surface Pro. But
Or edit photos on the go.
yeah, exactly. You'll be able to run full Windows applications, which is really the big sale here. Mobility chipset, mobility, battery life focus, and full Windows apps.
I like
And
that.
hopefully reasonably good performance for the ones that are actually compiled for ARM, which I don't think Photoshop is yet. So that's kind of like there's some work that needs to happen there. Like I think Chrome for ARM, desktop Chrome for ARM just got compiled a couple months ago. I don't think they've officially released it either. I don't think it's out yet. Correct me if I'm wrong there. But rounding out Microsoft's announcements in terms of laptops,
Yes.
we've got you've got Surface Pro 7, which is a thing. It's basically just iteration of Surface Pro.
Oh.
I think there wasn't too much that changed there. But more interestingly, like the Surface laptops have now come in two sizes, which I think is pretty cool. And one of them has AMD chips, which is a thing. That's total departure for Microsoft. So now they have products that have Qualcomm chips, AMD chips, and Intel chips. Qualcomm's really spreading itself, or excuse me, Microsoft spreading itself all over the board.
Is that a diplomatic move?
I would, I honestly, I
wonder.
think it might be.
Just to like get, I mean, because I'm trying to think. Well, I haven't really looked at an AMD processor in like 10 years, so I can't even. And I'm sorry to AMD. It's just the way the market has been and where the reviews have gone.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm sorry. It's just I'm kind of
I
wondering.
used to be a big AMD person, like way back in the day.
Yeah, back in the
like
day.
2009, but I guess that's literally a decade ago. Wow.
Yeah. We're
Um,
aging, by the way. We're getting older.
please stop telling me.
Sorry. I know, but we gotta accept it.
I think though that the 15-inch Surface laptop is probably the ideal place for them to put AMD. AMD historically has not been as efficient in the mobility side and as Intel, especially in terms of heat generation, things like that. Supposedly these new Ryzen chips are good. And they're obviously going to have a custom GPU solution in them, which should probably blow the pants off anything Intel's doing mobility wise with GPU. Like,
Yeah.
Intel has new GPUs for the new Ice Lake CPUs that are twice as powerful as the most powerful ones they've had previously. And I still think the AMD GPU solution will probably destroy it. It just probably won't even be close.
Yeah. Usually, if you're going into the Intel route, you're getting a GPU from a third party to kind of like do the heavy lifting for you there.
Exactly.
You're not relying,
and I think Microsoft probably wanted to avoid that with the 15-inch Surface laptop because they want to keep the Surface laptops definitely built to price point. So I think it makes sense for them to go with AMD rather than do an Intel plus a NVIDIA discrete solution, which is going to be much pricier.
And then it's a different marketing territory too.
Yeah.
Because once you hear NVIDIA, you think, oh, gamer performance. Okay.
Games.
Yes. I don't want to play games. I need to do work.
It's true. NVIDIA cannot escape that.
Sorry,
even I mean, don't get me wrong. I have an NVIDIA GPU on my desktop for games, and it's great.
Yes.
But I have always shied away from the discrete graphics laptop. I had one MacBook Pro 15-inch with discrete NVIDIA graphics years ago, like 2010. I bought it, and I played games on it. Literally burned the GPU alive. Just completely got destroyed playing World of
Bless
Warcraft
you for
because
trying, though.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
I had to get the logic board replaced under warranty, thankfully,
oh,
but I stopped playing games on it after that. It also got very, very hot. So
yep.
personally, I actually ordered the new 13-inch Surface laptop.
I saw that.
I looked,
I saw you talking about that on the
and
Twitters.
I think that kind of leads us into our next kind of point of discussion, which is so Microsoft has all of these mobility devices now.
Mhm.
They have a whole portfolio. They have if Microsoft came up down the street, they'd open up their coat and just be filled with laptops and tablets. Like
And they'd fit
they've
in
got
there.
a They've got they would. They are all highly portable.
Mhm.
So Google is expected to announce a laptop in about 10 days now, the Pixelbook Go, which is not what I would call it a follow-up to the Pixelbook because it shares the name, but it doesn't really feel like it's building upon what the Pixelbook did. It's really just tearing it down and going in a different
A
direction.
netbook. A Chromebook
Yes,
netbook.
but that's so this is like this topic just flummoxes me. Like I am so confused by what Google is doing and what their strategy is.
Productive.
I guess. Like so I think the idea with the Pixelbook Go, I think the marketing narrative is going to be they show the Pixelbook and then it shrinks and then it's like all the Pixelbook power
In your
now in
hand.
the palm of your hand.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, well, I use a Pixelbook Go on an airplane in economy seats, and it's fine. It's not too big for it. It works, especially if you're an even smaller person. It's perfectly sized. It's not a problem. It fits in my messenger bag. Granted, Pixelbook probably does not fit comfortably in most like purses or personal satchels, but like it's fine sized. If you are a person doing serious work on an airplane or a train or in the back of a car, it's perfectly fine sized, and the battery lasts forever because it's so big.
And that
So Google's,
keyboard. I
I
just
love the keyboard. It's
the
so good.
keyboard is the reason I love it.
I do love that keyboard. I am already afraid for the Surface Laptop 3 in terms of the keyboard transition. I've heard it's good, but I don't know if it's as good. I don't know if I believe people about that. Dan Seifert swears it's basically as good, but I don't know if Dan Seifert knows much about keyboards. At least my particular pickiness about them. So the Go is taking basically Google has used from the original the original Chromebook Pixel, a 3:2 aspect ratio screen. And that to me has been like the best thing about it. I love a tall
Okay.
screen. I like it because, if you're composing documents or you're in a chat room or you're reading a web page, tall means more content.
That's
You can get
fair.
more of that
Yeah.
content on the screen. And I've always loved that. Well, Pixelbook Go 16.9, which is even skinnier than a MacBook. And that's just like, ooh, why?
That's
I
like
don't.
old school Air,
Yes.
resolution, and it's like
Yes.
that tiny screen where you're just like, "Oh my god."
Yes, scroll forever. You do so much scrolling. And don't get me wrong, Chrome OS actually has really good scrolling. I think second only to Mac OS at this point. But
Agreed.
I don't I don't see the benefit in terms of 16. I mean, don't get me wrong. I do watch TV and movies on my Pixelbook, but not like if I'm doing work, I don't care if I have the black bars when I'm watching TV or
Yeah.
movies. It doesn't bother me. Like I don't mind. So I'm almost
Hmm.
upset at Google. I feel betrayed, quite honestly, by this design change. And I think the reason they've done it is because basically every other Chromebook is this way. And so I think Google is looking at all the other Chromebooks in the marketplace and saying, well, these little 16.9 laptops, they sell a boatload of them. Asus, Acer, Lenovo, all of these laptop brands. Granted, they're mostly the schools, but
Yes.
they're like, well, these are very popular. So we should do the popular thing that everybody else is doing. And I think that's misguided. I don't agree.
Yeah, no, you should not do the popular thing that everybody else is doing. If everybody else is watching Shane Dawson on YouTube because it's a popular thing to do, that it doesn't mean it's a good thing to do because he's a horrible person. So just
The Pixelbook Go is literally Shane Dawson's favorite laptop.
uh, there we go. We just put that out there. Just this is a weird. Again, I use that word reductive because I feel like it is what market. I mean, maybe this is for the education market. Maybe this is Google saying that it wanted to take away that market from their third parties.
Yeah, I just don't. I really don't understand it, and we already know it's going to be expensive because it's using a KB Lake R chip, which just guarantees the price floor on that thing is, if they were to build it as cheaply as humanly possible, still has to be at least $500, and it's going to be
Problem
more
with
than that.
Intel.
It's
That's the
going to be
problem
much
with
more than
Intel
that.
chips is that they are expensive. Like, you're gonna pay a
Yeah.
premium for that. But then what the heck do you do on that tiny screen? I'm just thinking about like our kind of productivity, like what we do. I'm constantly moving windows around. Like, I need to be able, like when you're crafting, for instance, with physical media, like you need to be able to have paper strewn about, and like whatever, string, scissors, all the tools that you have just around. And that's how I write and produce
Yes, me
content.
too.
Like, I've got a window here and a window there, and I've got a file behind this window, and I just let me be messy, because that's how my brain is trying to like put all this stuff together, and can't do that on a 16:9 resolution.
You really can't. Like, this is 16:9 guarantees you have one window in front of you, period.
On a 13-inch display?
Yeah. On the Pixelbook, I can on regular Pixelbook, it's tall enough that I occasionally will stack
Yeah,
windows a little bit, not a ton,
yeah,
but it's got so much more room. And I just, who does Google think the customer? That's my thing. Who does Google think
yeah.
wants this? I don't.
That's
And
what I wanna know too.
I love my Pixelbook. I deal with Chrome OS. Chrome OS is good at certain things, but mostly I deal with Chrome OS because I love the Pixelbook so much, because it's so portable, it's so light, and the layout to me is perfect. It's got a great keyboard, tall screen. I can get real work done
Can
on
do
it.
a half and half screen if you need to. Like, I'll write and I'll do research in another window and have that available to me.
So Badger asks, do you think it's for gaming on Stadia? And sure, I'm sure Google will include that in the keynote presentation. I'm sure they'll say, and it runs Stadia so you can play, Overwatch on the go. And it's like,
Cool.
well, okay. Like every other
Fun.
gaming laptop that all the cool kids are buying now. Gaming laptop sales apparently are through the roof.
Also, gaming laptops tend to hover around the 15.6 screen resolution, because like that's what you want to play a game at. You want to
Yes.
have some freaking screen space. You want to be able to like live and be immersed in the land that you're in. I'm sorry, I can't do that at 13 inches.
No, it's too small. A 13-inch laptop is not good for gaming unless you're like way up here. Like it's not going to work very well
Oh,
for
you're gonna
that.
be hunched over like, ooh, where's the bad guy? Oh, there he is. Okay.
Also, nobody's playing games with the trackpad. It's not a
Oh
thing.
my God, no! Just don't even put the trackpad in. I think they should just
Like if
sell a
you
mouse with it.
exactly like if you're a gamer and you want a mouse, well, you don't want a Bluetooth mouse because there's too much latency. You want a Wi-Fi dongle mouse because it's basically zero latency. Like these are so I think the gaming angle. I do think like Badger says. I think they're going to push that at the event, but I think that as a product point, like,
Someone's too mobile. So I'm sorry. Someone's too mobile about that. They need to call on some gamers. And I mean, maybe I'm sure they did, because Google does its research, but that doesn't feel like gamer think to me. Like, I don't think like that.
yeah. I think Google's whatever happened in the product planning for this, and don't get me wrong, we haven't technically seen it yet. I know that there could be new Chrome OS features debuted on it. I know that Google is going to try to make the case on the merits, but it's very hard for me to see this as anything but dead on arrival as it stands. I'm not even sure what Google could do to make this workable.
Me either. I did like I'm so happy with my Pixelbook. What else? You got to give me something that tops that. And
Yeah.
thus far, nada. And I'm even a Pixel Pen user, okay? Just to like put it out there. So give me something.
Yeah. So, I mean, this is why I waited for a little bit to see what was going to happen, because I love my Pixelbook. The battery is starting to degrade a little bit. And I'm at the point where also
Yeah.
I'm deciding, do I want to stick it out with Chrome OS? And sticking it out, you really do. I'm sorry. I love certain things about Chrome OS, but you are without a doubt sticking it out by being on Chrome OS.
Yeah.
You are making compromises. There are inherent compromises. And those compromises have, generally, Google has done very little to mitigate some of them, which is frustrating. Like local media handling. Handling local files on Chrome OS is a nightmare. It is the worst, especially if you bring Android apps into the mix.
It is an unorganized closet, is how I look at it.
It is. I just toss the files in there and like, well,
Pray to
there.
God
All
we
right,
can
bye.
find it later.
Exactly. Yeah, it's not a good system. I mean, I know Windows has many, 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 many faults, especially just relating to how much legacy they have to support and how things used to work with computers, and they don't really work that way anymore. But Windows is so good at organizing things, letting you set up a workflow, get you back to where you're going. It's not as instant on as Chrome OS, and that's what I love about Chrome. It's always there for me. Like as soon as I turn it on, like everything's like ready to go. Yep. But when I decided to order the Surface laptop, I just, as soon as I started thinking about I can run Photoshop, I can run Lightroom, I can have icons on my desktop, I can have organized folders on my desktop, I can have access natively to my Dropbox. I'm like, I'm an idiot if I stick with Chrome OS at this point. Like it's not the right platform. If you're going to be making an investment in a productivity device, like it just doesn't make sense. I wish it got there, but it never did.
Uh, Jules was highlighting my Easter egg in the notes, which is a tweet that I made this last weekend, which was coming back to my Chromebook after a weekend away with a Windows laptop. Is like coming home to a reliable friend that isn't so good at crafty things. It's like it's the friend that comes over and is like, "Hey, what are you going through?" Like they'll listen to you, they'll comfort you, like they'll watch movies with you, and like maybe make you some soup. But when you need help, like installing siding on your house, or maybe you need to clean the backyard, like they're not really the person that you call to do that.
That's accurate. That's a good Chrome OS
Because
analogy.
like I last weekend I went to LA to do work, so I wanted to bring my Windows laptop with me, the little old one that I told you that I have around, because the normal one that I use is too big to travel with, even though it is done me so well. It's a Dell Inspiron, which I know is like, Flo, what are you doing? You know better than that. You know what, people? I don't have a lot of money. I pay a mortgage. So we have to wait things sometimes. Um and that XPS like did everything that I needed it to do. And but it made me miss the Chromebook, the Pixelbook keyboard so much. Like it was
And
so hard to do any writing on that thing.
so this is a conversation I really wanted to have with this week's topic is
Yes.
like history of computers personally and just what has led us to make the product decisions we have. So like my first laptop, I didn't have a laptop until 2009. I had never owned one before. I had barely ever even used a laptop before
Were you
2009.
building them beforehand?
I had tower PCs growing up, for years. Like I think my dad got our family like a way too expensive like 486 in like 1992 or 3. Don't quote me on the years. I don't know my Intel processor history very well. But and then we just kind of like kept going, and I always had tower PCs and I always played desktop games. But when it came time to have my own computer, Flo, you and I are kind of like the same generation, that weird. So we probably went to college like right around the same time. And we were part of that weird generation where college had not quite become a place where you needed a laptop yet. But by the time I was finishing college, you needed a laptop. That's when it started. Like, so I'd finished in like my last school year was 2009-10. And by the time I was midway through 2009, everybody had laptops suddenly. And I'm like, where'd this come from? I don't have one of these. I have a desktop in my dorm.
So I didn't have a lot of money in high school, but I did website work on the side, which apparently people paid me to do. Thanks to all those people. Turns out if you go to church, there's a lot of people there who will pay you to do things on the weekends. So that really helped. I don't go to church anymore, but my freelance business still thriving. So I'm okay. But I bought myself, I worked 3 jobs one winter because I wanted 3 retail jobs because I wanted to buy presents for people, and I ended up making enough money. God, I work. See, back then we were young. We could like work a ton and it was fine.
Yes.
Like now I can't do that now. I can barely work like 8 hours and be, oh my God, I'm so tired. So I saved up enough money and I bought myself a gateway at Best Buy. No, at Fry's. I bought it at Fry's. And that's the laptop that carried me through college because I needed something portable before I ended up building a tower for gaming. But that was my trusty steed for quite many years of listening to music and doing work on the go. I never brought it with me to class. It was too heavy and clunky. I still took
Yeah.
paper notes. These days I just run with a lot of laptops because that's all I have room for. I'm
Yeah.
looking forward to moving into a bigger house because I'll have room to build a computer. Oh my god, that's where I'm at.
Yeah. So when I got my first laptop, I was a dumb college student who did not understand money. My parents did not teach me much about personal finance when I was a kid, and honestly, my parents made some pretty poor financial decisions when I was a child anyway. So when I
Feel you.
was in college, I went to the computer store in the library or in the bookstore. We had a separate computer store inside the bookstore. I went to
Mhm.
UC Davis, huge school, so like there was a bookstore was massive, and I started looking at MacBooks and I'm like, oh, really wish I could get one of these because that was when Apple still did student discounts. Like
Yes,
you would save like
10%.
yeah. So like I'm like, I want that totally fully loaded 15-inch MacBook Pro with the discrete GPU. And it was like $2,500 or something ridiculous. And I'm like,
Yes.
and then somebody told me, oh, you can just put that on your student account, right? And I'm like, what? You can just put things on your student account and just pay for them later, and I'm like, sold. And so yes, I was not good with money in my early 20s. I was very bad at it. I just, for somebody who's mathematically minded, I was real stupid. Anyway,
Hey, don't feel bad about it. It's the world that we lived in too, and back then everybody had MacBooks in college too. That was I always felt like an outlier with my PC. I didn't get a MacBook until I
yes.
had a salary job and they gave me one, and I was like, "Woohoo! I got a MacBook. I didn't have
Yes.
to pay for it. Oh, this is great!" And
It
that's
was
how I
the
used
rite of
Apple.
passage. Yep. And so one of my coworkers convinced me. I was doing a part-time job with him. He's like, you got to get a Mac. You got to get a Mac. You got to get a Mac. And I'm like, okay, Vince. And so I got it and I loved it. And that was when Snow Leopard had just come out. And so
Yes.
that was really peak Mac OS in my opinion.
Mhm.
Everything thereafter is kind of eh. But I only kept it for a year because
Hmm.
A, I looked at my student account balance and I'm like, oh, I have to pay this off after I'm done with school. Apparently, that's a thing. So I sold it to some guy. I actually didn't take that much of a hit on it. Macs really retained their value very
Yeah,
well,
that's the
especially
one good thing about them. They're like Hondas.
yeah. Yeah, I think I sold it to him for like 1,500 bucks and I paid 2,300 for it, which
That's
depreciation
not
over a
too
year
bad.
for a laptop.
Yeah.
That was pretty good. I was totally happy with that. And so I went to law school and I need the laptop again and I was broke. And so I'm sitting there thinking, all right,
Me too.
I need a laptop. And so eventually, basically, the first year of law school, I held out. I did not buy a laptop. And I wrote all of my notes by hand. I took all of my exams by hand, which was a nightmare. Like, had to write everything in blue books. Like, and these were
Writing
like, you
about
would,
Russia and China in hand is like it's not
oh
fun,
my God.
people.
And these were like, I would write like 2,000 word essays by hand. Oh, it's terrible. I mean, don't get me wrong. People used to do that all the time too. But and then I broke down and bought a crappy little refurbished Dell netbook. And that was my first experience with the netbook. And it was so bad. It was so slow. You couldn't believe how slow it was. Like that thing was tiny, but it ran the exam software. And that's all I needed it to do. And it worked. And I didn't have another laptop until I think by the time couple years after I dropped out of law school, I got a Dell XPS 13, which was like the super futuristic, the new style, the one that was like borderless and had the stupid bottom webcam that made it look like you
That's the one
made
I'm
my chin look,
yeah.
yeah, made my chin look even fatter than it is. And that was a really that laptop. I ended up hating it in the end. I really at first I was like, it's so cool. This is the cutting edge, and then hated it because the software was unstable, the battery life was terrible. It would randomly kill itself in my backpack, like just heat up to death. And yeah, really not a good computer. Also, the keyboard was terrible. So yeah, that was fun times.
So, Jules, I'm sorry I keep giving you away, Jules. You sent us a little note asking us like if we had kids, what's a good first computer? So I'm about to drop a news bomb on y'all. I'm actually having a kid.
Hey,
So
congratulations. I remember that. I knew that before, but now I know it again.
I'm like 5 months along, so we have a little bit of time, and I've actually been thinking about this a lot because I have a lot of friends who are using like really I have a lot of friends who are tech adverse, and they're like, I don't want my kid to immediately like jump into this world right when they come out of the womb, which is completely understandable. Like I didn't grow up that way, and I'm fine, but also I grew up in a very different age where I was able to like progress with that. Um, I still think like going with something old that you have laying around that is a little bit of limited is a good way to get young people just started on the path into computers. And then eventually, when you do get to like middle school, I mean, the thing is, though, all the public schools now, they give your kids Chromebooks.
Yeah.
So I mean, your tax dollars are paying for Chromebooks already if you're going to public school. So I guess I'm gonna have to give my kid my Pixelbook because by the time the kid is like able to do all of that fingering and like typing, and I mean they could also tap on the screen at the touch screen.
I mean, a good first computer for a kid is probably no real computer. Something without internet. Just don't. I would not be good at this. So what I would do is what my dad did to me, which was he gave me his old Tandy 1000, which was like mid 80s, like is real vintage. And I would try to play text based games, get too frustrated because my brain wasn't developed enough to like understand how they worked. But I loved playing with it and just trying to figure out like ways to do things. I mostly just play Wheel of Fortune, honestly, but like it had dot matrix printer attached to it, and it was just I loved tinkering with it. And eventually, I think we got the 486, and like Tandy was old news, but. I love that experience. It's something I will always remember. So the clackiness of the keyboard, the sound of it booting up and everything, sticking the floppy drives in, and it was such a tactile experience. Computers were way more tactile, like in the 70s and 80s.
Still
And I
can
think that's
be.
awesome.
It still can be. You can. I mean, I now apparently I build mechanical keyboards for fun.
I love mechanical keyboards. I have a mechanical keyboard.
Yeah,
I'm not enthusiastic about them, but I love the way it looks.
I do it for aesthetics because I just can't find like
Yes.
pinks and purples and like mint colors as much as I would like to.
Yeah.
And so I feel like our generation, we will have a lot of options to give our kids, and I'm looking forward to that. And I'm looking forward to keeping this Pixelbook around and handing it off as like a here's your first computer, kid. Hopefully, Google's still updating it.
Hopefully it works with like so this is the thing we've discovered actually. This is an interesting topic. So like I think last year Ryan who writes for us tried to use a G1 for like a phone. Well,
Mhm.
nothing
Mhm.
works anymore, and it's only been like 10 years, and basically it's useless
Yeah.
now. It is a physically just it's a relic. It can't connect to the internet in meaningful ways. The Wi-Fi doesn't work.
Oh, yeah, that's
Um,
right. Older bands on it, right?
older bands, and also it doesn't it doesn't work with the Wi-Fi security standards of today. The browser is too old to work with most websites now. Like it doesn't have the right security protocols. There's none of the Google services will work because you can't update Play services. Everything's just broken. And so yes, you could hack it such like you could probably figure out a way to like flash Linux on it or something, and really get hacky with it and make it into a functioning computer. But why would you? You will never be able to use that product in the way it was originally intended to be used ever again. That is kind of sad and depressing to me. And that's something like that makes like we already have an electronics disposability problem. We're making them even more disposable by making the software evolve so quickly that eventually the products just they're not functional. They just don't work.
I know this is a podcast, so it's audio only, but for those tuning in on the Twitch stream, this is one thing that has just never changed over time. I got this for my 12th birthday.
Does it still work?
Yes, it does. It does still
This is
work.
a Casio Pet Action.
Pet action, I
Personal.
have a little dog on there and everything. We were talking about these PDAs early on, and this darn thing still works. Just needs a watch battery in it. Didn't require security updates. Of course, it doesn't connect to the internet, but has a Tamagotchi on.
Yeah. I honestly I never really had many of those like kind of cool little personal electronics. It was never something that
This was a bag. Like, I asked for this for 3 months before my birthday. Like, this was leaving clippings around the house, like, because it was expensive. Like, that was a huge purchase for a kid back then.
Yeah, see, I was into the stupid normal stuff that I just wanted video games and video game consoles. That's all I wanted. That's all I cared about. And eventually PC gaming. I was
My
never
brother
really,
got those, so I benefited from the
I was
trickle
never
down.
very,
That's the trickle down effect. That's how it works.
yeah, I was never very gadgety. So that was like, which is ironic because that's like kind of like half of my job now. But yeah, it was it's sad to me to see a lot of these products just basically become useless. And I hope that maybe someday, like maybe, I feel like this is a very googly problem to solve too. Like Google should care about making things like live beyond their useful lifetime, be sustainable and be, you know, make like it's just I don't know. It's something that strikes me as a very Google problem to solve. And I think Chromebooks, we've seen Corbin posted a post recently. Yes, he as opposed to not posting it. But
Yeah.
he too many Chromebooks are just basically going unsupported really rapidly now. And retailers keep selling them, even though they're not getting security updates anymore. So it's pretty sad, I think, the state of things. I hate to do it. Well, when I was growing up, but I could still like go get the 486 PC that my dad bought. It doesn't need to be connected to the internet. I just need media. I need CD-ROMs, maybe some 3.5 floppies, and you can put all the stuff that was on there before, and it works.
And this is why we're still buying Macs and PCs.
Yeah.
Because at the very least, those are desktop operating systems that are continuously being upgraded, and like Apple and Microsoft will support you on those OSs. I mean, they don't refresh the OSs that often. It's like one big release every what 8 to 10 years kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it takes a long time. It's for them to really change meaningfully. So this has been a bit of a tangent, but it was an interesting one for me because looking at what Microsoft did this week and just where they've come as a company in the last, geez, Microsoft's been a company for over 40 years now, haven't they? It's been a long
They've
time.
been in my life a really long time.
Yeah. And just seeing them try it, I think that was kind of my point with the Surface, with the Neo and the Duo. We saw them really try to converge form factors more than they ever have before. And I
Mhm.
don't know how successful they'll be, but that is, I think, Microsoft really crystallized, where personal computing is probably going in the not too distant future in a way that, I mean, devices like the Galaxy Fold, sure, they exist. I think Microsoft, though, has shown historically apart from phones, a good understanding. I mean, granted, they had PDAs. Microsoft had PDAs. They saw the mobility revolution coming. They
Windows
just
Mobile 6 was good.
yeah. So they saw the mobile revolution coming, and way before I think a lot of other companies did. They just totally failed to capitalize in the end. Like they just couldn't
Yeah.
pivot fast enough. They couldn't anticipate like how mobility would be used by everyday consumers, and they focused on the business case, and so they failed. Anyway, that was really interesting to me, and so I figured like kind of taking a trip down computing memory lane a
I
little
got to
bit.
know you more through that, so thank you. I feel
Yeah, I think it's a fun little segue. And yes, as Jules points out, I brought it full circle, which I think is what you're supposed to do when you host a show. So, yeah, I think. Do we have any lingering questions in the chat here? I think so. We're going to use most of these episodes to kind of go through and do Q&A. I don't know if we've really collected many of them, but let's see here. I think somebody asked about um we're going to edit all this dead time out here. But Fold versus Microsoft Duo. Eh, Two different products, two different segments. I think that they're not the same thing. The Duo is for this tiny niche subset of users that might exist. It's not clear, and they're all business users. It's not a consumer device. It is not the next Sidekick. It's not, speaking of flash, blast from the past, but that was the cool phone to have in high school, by the way, for my generation. Like,
Mhm.
if you had a Sidekick, you were like, the BlackBerry people were like,
You
oh.
had AIM all the time. Anybody could send you an instant message during class.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. In my school, you either if you had, rich parents, you had a BlackBerry. But if you were like, had your own job and your own money and can make your own bad decision
yeah,
about which carrier you wanted to be in,
yeah.
you went T-Mobile and got a Sidekick for that texting to just be a
$35
texting
a month
machine. Yep.
for no voicemail.
Um, but yeah, I think between the Fold and the Duo, it's a different audience. They're just not the same thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Let's see here. I'm not seeing any other questions here so far. I wonder how many. How many business enterprise versus education markets versus consumers by Pixelbooks? It's mostly education. That's always been for Pixelbooks. Oh, Pixelbooks is probably mostly consumers. I would be very curious to know how many Google has sold. I don't think it's many. The
They haven't
Pixelbook
told us.
no, I have seen. I live in Silicon Valley, so I see a lot of them comparatively.
Yeah.
By a lot, I mean once every couple of months. And so, it's funny enough. The Pixelbook is like easily the most publicly complimented and commented on electronic device I have. Everybody's like, "What laptop is that?" Like because it is very striking looking. It's extremely clean lines and very thin and has that glass window on the top. It stands out in a really cool way. I always love the Pixelbook aesthetic. But no, I think most of the Pixelbook sales are almost certainly consumers. I don't think any educators are buying these. They're way too expensive. You know, for the kids, you want to buy laptops that are basically if you drop it down a well and it's gone, it's easy and cheap to replace. Like it's just I don't know why I chose a well, but kids destroy stuff. And so you need stuff that is cheap to replace.
Well, and American schools are underfunded, and so, you don't wanna
Yes.
spend that much money on technology.
Yeah. Okay. I think that rounds out questions for this week. We're gonna have to like probe you guys harder for questions in the future, because I'd like to make this a segment. But anyway,
Iterate. It's iteration, right? Starting something new, seeing what works.
yes, exactly. So this has been our first episode in the new format. So for those of you listening live, and for those of you also listening to the audio show after it's been recorded and put together by our wonderful producer Jules, I want to know what you think about the new format. Granted, give us a few episodes to really tighten everything up. This is our first guest episode. We haven't had a guest on the Android Please podcast, and it's been ages, honestly. Like I think usually our guests end up being Ron or Eric, and it's just because like they worked for us before, and I know neither of them are doing anything important on a Thursday night. So we've really had we need Cameron on the show. Absolutely, has been pointed out in the chat. So we want your feedback. Podcast@androidplease.com is the email address, or you can email me, david@androidplease.com. I'll read your feedback, but if it's really negative, I won't share it with anybody else. So just email it to podcast@androidplease.com. And I think it would be, just interesting to hear you guys' thoughts on a show that's not in the panel format. I know a lot of people like the panel format, but honestly, it's logistically challenging. And also, just I don't think you get the same kind of conversation. It's a very different kind of show. So you can catch us now, like I said, live 4 times a week on Twitch. We are at twitch.tv/Android Please. We will be broadcasting Monday, Wednesday, and Friday with the podcast. It's going to vary in terms of the times, like we said, but generally between 11 and 1 Pacific. Just look for the tweets on our official Twitter account. That's twitter.com/Android Please. And you'll be able to figure out when we're live. We'll consider doing a calendar, but right now it's just a private calendar. We haven't done a public one yet. All the stories we talked about today can be found at androidplease.com/podcast. And you can send your thoughts and suggestions, as I said, to podcast@androidplease.com. And then, Flo, it is plug time. You may plug
Okay.
yourself.
Okay. Well, you might know me from such shows as All About Android on the Twit Network and the Material Podcast on the Relay FM network. I'm also a freelancer all over the web. I cover Android laptops, a full number of things, and I have a podcast coming out soon. It's called Honestly Tech. If you want to find out more about that, you can go to honestlytechpod.com. I have not published yet, but teaser episode going out soon. So if you're interested, check that out.
You should check out all the things Flo is on. Flo is
Yes.
great. She's one
Thank
of the nicest, best, most interesting people in the
Thank you,
biz.
David.
And
I certainly try.
I'm so glad you were able to be the first guest on our revamped.
Like I said, I'm always here if you need me.
Yes,
Right
definitely
there.
not a desperate experiment we're trying in an attempt to revamp the whole show. But thank you for listening, everybody, and we will catch you all next time.